We can go ahead and start. The way we did this in the past, Julie and Marion, is we go through each recommendation and then discuss, and then take a hand vote if everybody's in agreement to leave it in the recommendation, and we usually leave unless we have a majority against, we leave it in the recommendation and put the vote below it. But we can just go through in order, or which to me makes the most sense. And I thought we'd take turns kind of. I think I said in my email that I took what everyone had given me, and this is not final at all. If there's something, I'm drawing a blank on what Jose wanted to add. This is the earliest we've ever done a recommendation in our 4 years. I expect that we would do a supplement anyway, because we definitely want to address discipline, and the last page shows the additional things that were on my mind that we could potentially address, but we'll hear from the people about discipline on the 7th, and then technology and real estate and leasing. Now, technology, we could all get a head start, and I keep saying I'm going to send you guys the link to watch their presentation to the board. But anyway, so
so part of the reason we're doing it early is the superintendent is specifically asked to, the district's in the process of working on the budget. I'd like to know at least what our thoughts are at this point. So we might even title it preliminary, in anticipating that we may have more to add. But at this way, we can get something into the conversation. Right.
That's the important part of having done it earlier. And then we want to thank Gilbert and his staff for being so accommodating and having 2 meetings a month instead of 1 so that we could get here. And
we'll have to send you a case of Red Bull or something.
And providing information whenever you're asked to.
But when I found out last week that they were having their budget workshop this Saturday, and that it would be advantageous for us to be part of that conversation, then the 3 of us got together this weekend to just for an hour and said, how do we want to format it? And then Susan did the hard work of formatting it and putting it in a document. So let's go. So I thought we'd take turns maybe talking about the things that are we're familiar with. And the first one is something that I added, even though we haven't talked about it and then it was my suggestion, I think, that we put them in order of magnitude. So we might have some shifting around if that's the approach we want to take. And so the first one, although we didn't talk about it as a budget commission, it was reported to the board. And here and there we do talk about our facility needs. And so the recommendation is that we need a long-term plan, a long-term facilities plan. Perhaps there's one already underway, and we're just simply echoing the need for that. But the reason that we need it is that we've got parts of the district that are overcrowded, and they need relief. We have the closed schools. We have the scattered offices. Those are a bullet I would like to add. And the absence of such a plan has everybody anxious and coming up with their own, and that perhaps that would be that if we had a plan that would, at a minimum, give people comfort that helps on the way. Is that any thoughts? Conversation?
My thoughts are that the district would benefit from a long-term facilities plan, so that it's not just doing, a narrow focus on what are we going to do just this year. It would be, I think, better if there was a long-term plan. We really didn't get a presentation on the Parsons report, but the Parsons report was commissioned by the district to look at the condition of our existing facilities. It wasn't there to really look at overcapacity, undercapacity, where do we need to build schools, not that sort of thing whatsoever. And this commission has looked at portables and things like that before. So facilities really covers a lot of ground. It could cover, the fact that we've maybe spent too little on maintenance, and we've accumulated a tremendous amount of deferred maintenance, and that's really what the Parsons report was speaking to. In the past, although it really hasn't come out as clearly as it might have in this Commission's recommendations, we have focused on the extent, I think in view of a lot of folks in the Commission, the overextent to which the district relies on portables for classrooms.
Permanence.
Permanent portables, right. And so I think I think there's a good point to be made about recommending that the district develop a facilities plan so that it is working towards a long-term goal of some sort. But I think we need to be clear about what we're saying, because, and as I mentioned this to Louisa, but in our recommendation we talk about the Parsons report, and that really doesn't talk about portables at all. As a matter of fact, the report says they specifically did not even look at portables. So if we want to talk about that issue, I think we just need to rework it and I think be clearer to ourselves as well as about what we're trying to say.
Do you want to add like a portable inventory or anything? And you had said something about deferred maintenance, and for some reason I thought this had gotten incorporated, but I think that was in an email you sent.
Right. Yeah. So before I sent my email, I really was, took a few minutes just to look briefly over the Parsons report to see what it really said, and I would encourage you to look at it. I mean, it seems like a pretty good report, because they laid out 4 different possible action scenarios for the district to, what's the goal, right? What level? Apparently Parsons has a sort of a nationally recognized methodology for rating the conditions of facilities, and ours are relatively low. There's no surprise. And then they said, what is you could take this approach and you could target this level. So I won't try and rehash it all. The report is in the Dropbox that Louisa
Yeah, there's
created.
a summary and then there's a mega report. So.
And so, I'm sorry, Lucy.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so my view would be to at least, even though we really haven't. So I have a concern that the Commission really hasn't really studied this carefully enough. I mean, so that I took a few minutes to look at Parsons, but we really have not heard yet about what the status is on portables and over and under capacity at different campuses. We really haven't had a presentation of our own on the Parsons report. Nevertheless, I think we all are aware of problems that we have in our facilities. So if we want to, we can certainly make the point. I think if we want to make the point, I think it should sort of be two-pronged. And there should be a comprehensive facilities plan to address 2 things. Okay, one is the condition of the existing facilities, and what is the plan for raising the condition. And then secondly is what are we going to do about the, in my view, unacceptable reliance on portables for classrooms. So,
And then also, go ahead, Lucy.
Have we made any determination as to where the most need is? For instance, are we looking at the high schools, the middle schools? When I see that the teachers are going from room to room with a cart, I know for years they've done that, but I don't know if the building itself, which buildings should we start looking at?
Well, the Parsons report has a map, has several diagrams, but it has a map that, to back up, they have this grade that they give every building.
Okay.
And it's an FCI, Facility Condition Index. And then so you can go through their deep report, and you can go page by page and look at a campus's rating. And on each campus it'll have what it would cost to replace and rebuild or renovate.
Okay.
And then it has this score. But on their summary report, to get to your question, it has a regional map of, by feeder pattern, who has a roll up of all those individual scores, and it's red, blue. It's red, yellow, green. So green, you would find where the new campuses are. So if you looked at a map that's just the campuses, you'll see green where all the new campuses are. But then they roll it up by feeder pattern, and they've got, so you can get an overview of where the hot spots are in terms of building need.
Okay.
But then the question is, does the building need what I think what Jim's getting at is what the Parsons report didn't have, but what is available is there's another map. If you go to an attendance zone boundary committee or something like that, it shows which buildings are over capacity.
Okay.
So if you put the two beside each other, you say, well, here's overcapacity and really old, and maybe, but it's not for us to prioritize, but but it's there.
Okay, one reason why I would like to know is that, for instance, are any of these buildings or facilities under the bond program? I was at Marsalis this week, Monday or Tuesday, I guess, when they had the ribbon cutting. You know, they had added a whole section to that building, and of course,
so it would be
right, and that was the completion of a bond.
Right.
Okay. So do we know how many of these buildings are still under?
I think the bond's Gilbert, isn't the bond like 95% complete or higher?
I believe so. I know there was a remaining amount of about $40-something million that had to be reallocated, and I thought those decisions had already kind of been made and prioritized.
Well, we should be looking at that too, as far as how many of the buildings are already.
I thought Parsons included that because
there's a list of schools that still have bond money attached, but so that might have been reallocated.
That is my understanding.
This assigned, Parsons assigned, it's a snapshot in time of what it would cost to renovate or rebuild each particular campus, and then that 2008 bond status is sitting over here. But if a new school was built or a new school was renovated, it's reflected in the Parsons report. So, I think we definitely, if we keep this in, we definitely couch it with that it wasn't a presentation that came before us, but we had access to the material or something.
Oh, sure. I mean, I don't have any problem at all making the statement. I'm really trying to be respectful. The other members are going, we didn't hear about this. I don't know what we should be saying or not saying. But I think more generally, one of the things the district has to grapple with is what our tax base can actually fund. I mean, it would be nice to be able to fund $60 million sports facilities, hopefully with better concrete. But our tax base just cannot support that. And there's a general question, when you look at your property taxes, there are two things that go to the ISD. That's where there's a tax for M&O, maintenance and operations, and then there's a separate tax, INS, for interest and something that really funds bond issues, right, and provides the funds to repay the bonds, the debt. I don't even know, whether or not that tax rate and the money that comes out of the INS side is really enough there to maintain, the sort of quality you would ideally love to see, right? Because the money just isn't there. But there's a separate problem that we I think we could speak to if we wanted to, which is to say, I think in the pursuit of academic programs and things like this, we have really gone too cheap on maintenance, and we've accumulated a large backlog of deferred maintenance, which contributes to just the low condition, the weak condition of our facilities. And so we don't have a lot of information to attach specific dollars to it, I don't think, but you can look in the Parsons report and start to develop some ideas of the magnitude here. We could say, we should really be increasing what we're spending on maintenance, and maybe to clarify, there's two parts to our maintenance budget that says this is to start to make a dent in that deferred maintenance.
Well, and something.
So, but those are all things we could say, but we're working on limited information at this point.
So we've already established that the ISD, the department that handles that has already outlined the unutilized. No.
Oh, you're talking about the bond,
No.
the unspent bond.
The demographic department.
Yes.
They've already outlined that. So we know what buildings are underutilized, and we know what facilities need maintenance and what facilities are overcrowded. We already know exactly lined out like that, right?
It's in silos of departments.
Yeah. I'm talking about the schools.
Yes.
The information's there.
Yes, the information is there.
Somebody needs to put it all together.
That's what I'm saying, but they already have.
There's not a comprehensive plan that's been communicated to anybody that says, here's what we're going to do. We've got this information. These 10 schools are overcrowded. 3 of these 10 schools need.
They wouldn't have that when they do the.
They have the information, but they haven't created.
Demographics has this
Step by
stuff.
step.
Operations
I
has this
understand
stuff.
The demographics already have that outline. They don't have that.
But they don't have anything to do with what the state of maintenance at the school, whether the roof's falling
I
down.
was talking about more of the overcrowding. I'm talking about the overcrowding.
This is looking at both of those together, kind of.
But Gilbert, let's put it to you. I mean, so obviously the commission hasn't seen it recently, but there's this commission. There's another commission, that looks at boundary lines and things like that. And I'm sure they have looked at where we are over capacity, under capacity. But what have they said about that? Is there a plan that has come out of that?
Not that I am aware specifically, but it's a great question to pose really to the bond advisory topic.
And we heard from we forgot, it was back in the fall, I think it was October, November, the demographics department showed us,
Because attendance on boundaries, that's presented in the first 2 months, so usually of the year. Right?
So the boundary changes proposals, or the things they're looking at, normally we try to get them around the time frame of January, sending to the board in terms
So
of
you would have to know how many buildings are overcrowded,
well,
right? And how many facilities
there is
needed
that,
those
there
items.
is that component that takes place in that process. However, I think the more detail regarding demographics, I'm only speaking about demographics, is to really see if there's areas where we're just way over capacity and we need to make some sort of recommendation to address that by changing boundaries. And then it's all communicated, and of course it goes to the whole advisory committee and so on and so forth.
But I'm
so there's
still
that
concerned
one
about
piece.
that I asked.
Only if there is those types of issues that I'm aware of.
Because the principals are hiring teachers earlier this year too, right?
the boundary decisions have been
I
made.
said I was some of the teachers. Was this another question if I'm allowed?
So the teachers, regarding the teachers, the staffing is out there for them to kind of guide them as to what they're anticipating for the following year. In terms of actually committing or offering them, I think there are some initiatives in the HCM department to address that earlier, yes.
Because if you can't hire teachers if you don't have enough room.
But I'm sort of, if I'm thinking about this recommendation and the potential of making this recommendation, that there are 2 separate but related issues. So one is the capacity and the utilization of the campus, and the other are the ceiling tiles falling down. And so they are 2 different, but they're related. So if you've got a campus that's underutilized and also falling down, is that a campus that then you're going to take the maintenance crew and send them to that place, versus are you going to send a maintenance crew to the campus that's overcrowded and also in equally bad shape? So they're separate but related, so the 2 arms ought to be talking to each other. To me, as far as
I was more of thinking about the overcrowdedness and underutilized campuses.
right, which is
Do
huge.
we know that? Do we know that? What those are? So.
Well, I think to me the other way they're related is I think we've done maintenance on the cheap. Basically, we've just let things run into the ground and then we build a new one when it won't stand any longer. And so that's where the 2 budgets come into play. And But here's what I would suggest in terms of, rather than trying to devote a lot of time to redrafting this, on the fly here, think about what we want to say, and then let's think about what we need in order to, make our recommendation, and see if we can get some additional information, so that we can, because it's, so if we, to the extent I think we want to talk about capacity utilization, and of which portables is part, we need some data on that.
Okay, I've written down that to incorporate that we've heard this kind of information in prior years. This year we heard from the demographics people, and we learned about School Dude, which addresses the deferred maintenance. Then we also had access to the Parsons report. So that's the background on why, what our familiarity with the subject. But then in terms of adding additional components to this, that part of, in addition to addressing the needs of the overcrowded areas, we need to address the issue around the schools that are closed, the scattered offices, and then mentioning something about the deferred maintenance costs. But I guess just to move on to another topic, just generally, how does everyone feel about having this topic on the table at all?
I think they both need, like you said, the demographic and the facility need to really talk to each other to make sure that when they're looking at the buildings, that 5 years down the road, instead of waiting on a bond, which is going to be forever, so we'll know, make good usage of the facility and for our kids.
Keep it.
Okay. So,
And that we only know about that from reading the newspaper or watching
That's
a board
the one
meeting.
you're talking about,
Yeah,
where
where
they would move
we
the
talked,
offices in this
and
building.
and we'll hear about it with next month with the real estate and leasing people, where they tell us how many buildings the district owns. So those of us that have been around a while kind of know the integration of it. But okay, so we'll keep it. We will continue to work on the content. Do you want to take number 2?
Just
Go ahead. Oh, an
could you
additional
request
data.
for us? Do you know what I'm talking about? That it's a chart that shows, by campus, what the campus capacity is, how much over capacity, how much relying on portables, age of it. That's a real estate thing that.
I've got everything but the
I think
portables.
we have all that.
Because the portables are not ever considered when you're
Yeah,
doing capacity.
Years ago, we used to calculate portables as part of as if they were permanent, and
So,
thankfully we stopped.
Do you
Yeah.
have the data?
I have everything but the portable count.
So what we need in terms of the portable is the
How
number
many
of
portables
portables per
per
campus.
campus?
Okay.
All right, you want to take number 2?
Right. So number 2 is just an approach that I think the district should be not just sort of an island. Right? We should be looking at benchmarking ourselves against other districts that we consider to be our peers, and in particular for compensation levels and for staffing ratios, to see if we are materially different, and if so, to try and correct for that. So on compensation, we need to be sure that we are competitive in our compensation levels, but at the same time, we should be aware if we're paying materially more. Not that we shouldn't, but you need a good justification for that. Are we getting the benefit of it? And I just think we should recommend that annually the board get a report on this. It'd be public information about how are we spending dollars. And this is not just compensation of teachers. I mean, it would be for every function, from teachers and custodians to superintendents. See, how we're paying everybody, and then sort of related to that under number 2 here, we've heard that the district is looking at an increase in compensation across the board of 2 to 3%, and I'd like to recommend that we wait on making a decision on that until we've seen the ERG data on compensation. The is the Education Resource Group peer group study that is expected to be available in April.
Wouldn't the comptroller's office have that? The comptrollers have those comparisons that you're talking about?
The Texas comptroller?
They did an audit a few years ago for the district, right?
There is the possibility that there's some data there. Normally, where we compare ourselves to, of course, is using the ERG model. Is one of the last couple of years we've used that. The other thing that we do, obviously, we take this HCM's functions, so they actually do surveys in terms of the compensation models, and in terms of comparison, one of the things that we use mostly, of course, is how much do we spend, by category. By category, you're referring to, is it custodians, is it auxiliary, and we do it by function in terms of the budget piece. So we do that comparison as well. So maybe a little more representative would be a more in-depth, and I know we keep talking about this the last 2 or 3 years, as to actually do a, I don't know what you call it, some sort of salary study. We've talked about it, and I'm not certain if we have done it or where we're at with
And that was the recommendation last year.
Exactly. So if it's the same topic we're continuing to discuss, I really I can do a little more follow-up. I know it's been brought up to the board on a couple of occasions as well, but I don't know exactly where we're at district-wide in terms of compensation.
You know what their report is from, it was a few years ago, they did, the comptroller did an analysis of the district.
So every so often they do certain reports, and I can't remember the last time we did one. It must have been one a long time ago that we focused on custodial. I can't remember.
I was thinking that
Things, areas
you
of
mentioned
operation.
something that we might need to look at more specifically, and that would be looking at the line codes of the various departments, or like special ed and bilingual, etc., and see how many teachers or how many teachers we have in that category as compared to that same category with another school district.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we're looking at just local districts or statewide districts. Some of our local districts are within certain areas where it requires different types of things in a school, okay? Different types of people. And so when we do compare, I think we need to specifically look at programs, the community where the kids live. And of course, we're going to talk about pre-K, do they have those opportunities and things like that? And if not, putting teachers in certain classrooms, they might have to look at different learning styles and really, well, they have to do that anywhere, but more so, in some of our schools. But I just really, because when we got this report, they did it on an average.
The ERG.
The ERG report.
Yes, you can. There's some other guys.
Teachers and
That's a copy of the recommendation. You don't have it.
we were paying more.
We're on item 2.
But I still didn't understand what how they compare those programs
Right.
with the many programs that we might have above and beyond that will have lower class sizes in
So-
our district. So
No, I think it's a good point, because my conversations with the ERG people, they have all the data, but what I wrote down is when you look at ERG, consider the suite of programs in terms of helping with other categories, but if we're comparing to peers, what's our percentage of special ed compared to their percentage of special ed? What's our percentage of helping?
Bilingual
Yeah.
teachers and, well, special ed. And
Yeah, because it's,
even, because the class sizes are lower.
so it'd be
So-
bilingual, special
I'm not
ed.
saying we have to be the same, but I think we've learned in the past that some of our compensation has drifted significantly away from what other districts are paying for comparable positions at considerable expense to the district.
But when it comes to ratios, there could be a reason that our ratios are different because our demands by program category are different.
Right.
Are more significant,
It seems like it's important to compare apples to apples, and so that would have to do with the programs. But to compare so that you have that information is important to citizens because it's the tax dollars that are being spent. So this doesn't say don't pay people what we're paying them. It just says let's look at it and be sure we're benchmarking and that we're actually comparing apples to apples. So if we have more, that data should be available, right? There's more special ed in Dallas and in Houston. If that is true, then that would explain some things. But
we
if it's
already-
not true, then we would have that information as well.
And I think we already know that our bilingual population's higher than Houston, but let's not verify that now, but give me some ideas of other levers or other things that would influence the need to have higher ratios besides bilingual and special ed. Or lower ratios or different ratios.
In terms of the state mandated, we're pretty stuck to in terms of K through 4th, and we got to serve those two specific populations of regular students versus bilingual students.
magnet schools.
But in terms of the magnet school, again, it's a program that the district has decided to support, and what the ratios turn out to be there may be different. However, it is a program that, as a district, we've decided to support. So whatever it takes to support that specific program, whether it's a ratio, I don't know what the ratios are, honestly.
Yeah, but when you just mentioned that it could, the student-teacher ratio could be different
That's correct.
because we have lots of magnet schools.
So we have the Townview magnets.
I don't know that because I have not looked.
Actually, as a percentage, we're about 15% magnet.
I can tell you from past experience when we looked at magnets is that they're more costly.
Right, they are.
Because your
That's
your
the bottom
ratios and even when we do allocations, there's two kinds of allocations. You do the direct expenses for magnets, but then you've got to do an allocation of the campus, and sometimes there's within a campus there may be regular plus the magnet program. So you do an allocation of the campus administrative costs, and then you do the allocation of the district costs. But when you do those allocations, magnets tend to be more expensive.
I don't think our teachers should be penalized because of the ratios, at these different types of classrooms and that we do have in this district. Like I said, I don't know if we have fewer or more. But if we have more than others, then we will see a different type of a ratio. And I don't think that we should be looking at lowering our teacher's salary based on that.
No, but I think I'll give you another example of where we want to staffing ratios. I'm really not talking about just classrooms. How many custodians do we have, right? And I don't know the right way to look at that. You can look at it on a square foot basis. You can look at it different ways. I'm not trying to get. I think it's difficult. It's not good for us really to get too far into the details on how each of these things should be analyzed. But I do think it's important that we see how other people are doing it and be aware when there are differences and understand why we're different. Again, it's not to say that we shouldn't pay folks more or less for any particular position. That's all I'm advocating for here is let's get some knowledge out there and let's be systematic about it, not just a one-time thing. Every year, let's see how we're doing. Let's look at what other folks are doing so that, we're paying people competitively And I know that's the HCM's responsibility to do that, but I'd like to see the data. I think that's important.
And we've been, and I'm certainly have done it, but we have mentioned this number that was revealed to us 2 years ago that we were over, but we need to look at it again because those that we considered our peers could have raised their salaries, therefore showing that we're equal now.
And you're absolutely right. And there's a couple of other components that have taken place in the last couple of years, as you've noticed. We had a retirement incentive sort of thing. So there's some things that have changed quite a bit from 2 years ago. And this data that we're hoping to have, hopefully in April, will hopefully take those things already into account, and hopefully will level out a little more. In terms of every time as a district, not specifically myself or Jim, but every time as a district when we're proposing staffing ratio changes, the background before we make those recommendations as a district, they look at other comparisons at other districts. For example, if we're proposing one of the things we proposed last year was to reduce the staffing ratio of assistant principals from 550 to 500. That was very strategically done. That was something the superintendent really wanted to focus on, and the district wanted to support. So again, there was other things, a lot of components that came to that decision. So there is a lot of work being done in terms of that. Now, how extensively we do it on all the other categories.
Or if you do it all at the same time, it seems like let's talk about this one and let's talk about that one, just like
when
the
Kim
previous
was here, we did a bunch of that the first year when we were in cost-cutting mode. I mean, we did a bunch of that, and some of you were not in the committee, but we did do a lot of that, and as a result, there was some recommendations from your group and from the district too. So what I'm hearing is we need to do more of that. Right now the staffing ratios as a district, HCM and school leadership kind of coordinate, and obviously we support with the dollars and determine the cost and whatnot. So we certainly can do that. I don't know to what extent you guys want us to do it.
I mean, I think that there's also, we're under new administration, a new period where we're not losing $100 million from the state. One of your items is number 5, and you guys had asked, why is it we budget at 24-1, but in reality we're at 18-1, which is something I've looked at for years and years, and I can give you a very long presentation, but it really gets into the theory of large numbers, and this is the problem, is that if you were to look at a elementary school, and the elementary school's got 300 kids, and you divide that by 12 different classes, you're going to get a smaller ratios, and it just happens by how many kids you have in a particular class. But if you take that same elementary school and you enlarge it to 800, and it's only serving, say, 3 grade levels, you're going to get much closer to 24-1. And it's just, and people ask, well, why did you close these small schools when they were successful? Well, because small schools with large grade expanses are very, very costly. And that's why you will see that most school districts within the state are building schools that are 800 elementary schools, and why middle schools have increased, and why high schools, because you can get a much better ratio, teacher-student ratio, and lower your costs.
Out of curiosity, so one of the things we heard from the ERG folks is that there's no relative outcome and cost benefit to lowering class sizes for teachers.
Most of the statistics shows that class sizes between 15 to 24 doesn't make a difference in terms of, now it's what they call their academic performance indicators.
It's money.
There is some, when you lower it down below 15 and you get into the 7 to 8 to 1 ratios that tend to be much, I think you get better results, but how costly that is.
The question is, the schools that are 300, are those perceived as, and in fact, more successful schools for that community than schools of 800? Do we have data on that, or is there?
I don't know, but I can't tell you that out of those 11 schools we did close. I know at least one of them was, in those
Bonham.
terms, it was the highest rating, which was excellent. Was that the exemplary? Thank you. Exemplary. So, you know.
Just okay.
So, do we
I
want
can
to
tell you that there are large elementary schools, especially down where I come from, that are exemplary at 800.
I've
Well, that's
also-
what I'm saying. It's really not always the number.
Yeah.
I've seen some large elementary schools that have the cushion to get a higher rating without meeting the needs of all kids.
And I think that Mike's point is, look, you know, we need to put in the TEI and the SEI and the PEI, and if we increase, you know, and start measuring people on performance, and what we call it data, you know, data driven, but there's another word, data training, and you look at how every single student is doing by every single teacher, and then you focus on that, and you know, he's put in this demonstration of learning and inputting it, and you know, the first year, from what I can see as an accountant, it looks like it's made it a difference. We'll see soon, at the end of this year, how his second year has done. But that's his concentration is on improving school performance.
There are other things that play into that too, not just like you said, the numbers. It's the staffing of the average age of the campus, of the teachers, the experience, the input from resources. It's just, you know, a lot of factors that I don't know, have we ever compared that? You know, if we have a campus between 301 with 800 kids, what really made the difference? And it wasn't just, you know, the numbers. Was it the resources? Was it the involvement of the parents? Was it, what really is it?
Yeah, I mean, that's
Well, let's
in terms of experience.
we
Again,
could
the
theorize
ERG
all that
shows
stuff. Can we?
experience doesn't make a difference in terms of ERG point of view. Experience, teachers' experience, doesn't make a difference.
Training, you know, you have to still, yeah, and I understand that, but
So, do we want to leave is everyone all right with leaving number 2 in the document?
The question that I have, well, that's number 3. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So you want, but number 2, are you all right with leaving that on there, Marion?
I'm going to go back to number 2 because I had wanted to say something.
Is that just benchmark annually compensation and staffing ratios, and do it annually before you make a decision on increasing compensation, and it's all within the same time frame of the budget because it's available in April.
Just look at all the things we already have the facts of the, and I keep talking about the comptroller's office. I mean, they did an audit, right? But we don't know when it was, and right, we don't know when it was.
Well, the comptroller office does every year what they call the STAR report, but that's only one R, STAR. What it does is, I think that their statistics have gotten a lot better, but they put you with your peer group, and they then give you ratings based on, and it's the same thing, is they give you a rating based on your academic performance versus your cost. And you know, I think our STAR rating this year was for last year is 2.5 stars out of 5. So no, have we done an in-depth look at that? No, I haven't. Their formulas, which, as I say, have got a lot better, are regressions analysis and logarithmic formulas that I don't have a complete understanding yet. I'm not really sure maybe my staff does, but they can tell you. I can tell you the results. Right now, I can't tell you off the top of my head our quote-unquote peer groups. It's hard for us to have a peer group when we're the second largest school district.
I was comparing. I just keep hearing, you know, we're comparing. What is our peer group? So I mean, that's the same thing to me. So maybe it's not.
Is this number 2 actually saying that we should not compensate or give them a salary raise this year? Because
No, just first thing, you get the information in
so
April.
we need a study. We're going to get that from ERG in April. Okay.
Well, I can tell you that we're taking to the board with a recommendation of 3% across the board raise for everybody with the 1% to benefits. The 3% is going to cost us about $25 million and about $500,000 for the benefits.
So the money is there.
Well,
I mean, why should
So
it's how you divide up the
what-
resources versus the requests. So.
And what I suggested in the recommendation I drafted is that a decision on that be deferred until we can see how we're compensating folks relative, position by position, not in the aggregate, I mean relative to our peers, that we compete
And the
for,
market,
that we
the local
compete for
market.
everything from, nurses to teachers to custodians to CFOs. I mean, we should not make these decisions in a vacuum.
Well, I'll say two things to address that, and one of them it doesn't look like I've got the spreadsheet, but I can show you what the increases with the school districts in and around Dallas was this current year, and actually I do have it. You might pass it out, and you can look. And you can see that the increases at school districts in and around Dallas range from a high of 5% to a low of 1%, and we were at 2%. Now, that's one piece. It's the top school districts. That's one. The other thing too is that you have to realize is that Mike Miles is introducing, from my perspective, from a business perspective, a truly revolutionary way of paying teachers, which, and it might be prejudice in the, it's a way in private industry. We're going to pay them based on performance. And so what we call the floor is going to be based on what their compensation is next year. That's going to be the floor. So by giving them this raise now, we think it might be more, compatible to understand that, that's their floor. And, that might be a little bit of that motivation to give that 3%. But after that...
As many teachers last year?
Sorry?
Did we have a large turnover of teachers last year? We gave them the 2%, and
I've got that number somewhere, but unless Gilbert knows it, I don't know it off the top of my head.
I was just wondering.
I will say this, is that we have looked, and we've had two other people look at the new compensation plan, and the new compensation plan, and we talked about the new compensation.
We're not weighing in on whether or not to give the raise. We're just saying,
Right.
let's have
This
data.
is not an
before
opinion
this.
on whether 3%, maybe it should be 5%, or and this isn't saying anything about the new compensation plan.
So just look.
It's just, let's look. That's all we're saying.
Let's have a systematic approach that once a year.
Running the ERGs.
Great. Okay, so we're leaving it in.
So would that be
Anybody?
considered what he just handed us, part of that study that you would want?
Any and all data. I'm not trying to
To me,
force it
that's-
into particular. It doesn't even have to be ERG data. If there's better data from the state,
So we can.
Who just likes data?
And when you say competitive salaries, that means as compared to market, and he's not showing the market salary, but he's showing what the increases have been.
All the increases that were done within this
So-
region.
Everyone all right with leaving number 2 in?
Yes.
Okay. Mary?
Well, I think we need to look at when the audit was done, and we need to have one.
Okay.
We need to have one to see,
Well,
make sure.
are we
Say
going to
audit.
leave it in as
To study.
for the study? Or are we leaving it in as a recommendation for saving money?
But we're
with
this is
salaries,
not
with the
this is
salaries?
not making a recommendation either way on saving money. It's just let's just say, let's make a more informed decision. Let's make a decision based upon more information.
On that.
Yeah.
The second part does say, let's wait until we have information to make a decision.
Right.
Well, how long will that take when they are already bargaining the increase? Real.
This is next month.
How long
Next
would-
month,
are we
April.
gonna-
2 weeks.
2 weeks? Can they wait? I mean, have you already?
They don't-
Budget's not going to be brought in until June.
June. Okay.
They're only
Oh,
talking about
okay.
it now. So
Just
we're
wanna know. Okay.
we're entering our opinion in the discussion.
Very good.
Great. You want to take number 3?
Sure. Running a school district is a really complicated thing, and I think there's a case to be made for focusing on the things that we should be good at, like educating children, and at least looking at outsourcing things that others have more expertise in. Many businesses rely on other firms for their maintenance, for their custodial services, things that aren't core to their business. And this is a recommendation we've made in the past. Custodial services, and I think more broadly, we've made a recommendation that the district look at outsourcing non-core services, and I'd like to reiterate that. And in particular, I think one of the things, even though the district ultimately chose not to outsource custodial services when we looked at this 2 years ago, it brought to light something that folks really hadn't appreciated, which is that our custodial services costs were way out of line with what other districts are paying for the same services. So, when the quotes came in from independent bidders, we learned that the district could have custodial services provided for $28 million while we were spending $43 million. That's $15 million that could have been freed up to pay for lots of other educational resources for kids, more teachers, other things. And had we not looked at that, we would not have saved what we've already saved. Out of the $15 million, by my count, we've saved about $7 million. This year, the budget is $36 million for custodial services. That's down from 43, so it's definitely in the right direction. But we're still spending $8 million more than we need to on custodial services. So.
And it's probably my mistake if it's missing here, but we had in here a recommendation to also look at central office staffing ratios.
Well, I
Did you blend it into something else?
yeah, I'll just up here. I just going to try to economize
Okay.
central
Because,
office staff so that.
well, the place where I had information that I requested that in 7 years we have lost 73 maintenance people and 100 and something custodians as compared to 7 years ago. So maybe we pulled that out by. So I'm just saying, in addition to being over, we have fewer people doing the work. Over in costs and fewer.
So you're recommending that you outsource myself and Gilbert?
Perfect.
Well, we're talking about custodial services, but of course they did reduce the staff.
That was a joke, so.
That's funny.
To help the budget out there, but the landscaping services, I thought that was already sort of outsourced.
I thought that we had saved $10 million and we had made our numbers at least the first year.
On custodial,
Lower
yes,
the
but
number.
are people happy? And it's my mistake that another component of this conversation with respect to maintenance and custodial is that our head count's way down as compared to 2006.
There
So
was,
just because we saved money doesn't mean we're getting the job done. So to me, we just need to. It's another one of those things where on some periodic basis, it's part of our routine that we ask ourselves if we're doing better internally than we could do externally.
So just to clarify the custodial, we did save $10 million during last year. This year we added a little more back in additional services, so that's probably where the difference is coming along. But last year we did save the $10 million, realized the $10 million savings, but this year we did increase that a little bit.
And I would imagine if we had outsourced it and brought them in, that the first year if they had made the number, the second year number would have been higher too. And I think the other thing you got to understand too is that when private industries are trying to make their way in, they sometimes tend to.
You have an opinion, but we just want to suggest that we look at it constantly.
Have we ever
That's fine.
communicated face to face with the
I'm not arguing with any of your recommendations. I think they're all.
janitorial company so that they can give a bid to see what it would actually cost if we were to outsource it?
So maybe the recommendation should be we should consider
Did it 2 years
an
ago.
RFQ
And how did that?
every so many years.
That's what he's saying is
Right.
they pay-
So what we found, we had, I think there were 4 independent vendors with experience in this area that bid on it. At the time, our budget was $43 million. When the bids came in, the lowest bid was from a group called GCA. They do Garland. They've done Garland for decades, I believe, and many other school districts in the country.
in community college and hospitals.
And based upon their quote, the custodial services would have cost the district $28 million, $15 million less than what we were spending.
And they outsource the custodians during the day and evening of the schools.
Yes, as a matter of fact, in addition to the Budget Commission looking at it, the district had a principals group.
They were handpicked. Those principals were handpicked. They weren't like put it out there and give your opinion. And I bet if you gather them now, if they're still here, they may have a different opinion because they were handpicked. And I have a strong feeling about this because I don't look at myself, look at the custodians as a non-educated part of a school. I think they're an integral part of the school because of what they give to the school. I know a lot of people look at them as, they just clean up or they just the help, but it's a whole different realm. And then we had the experts from the department said it doesn't work. They work with people every day, and how can we recommend something and the experts said it does not work?
The principal that was spoke, I don't think it was the lead principal, was asked by the principal group to speak to us about the principal's findings, said he had been at Garland. He was an assistant principal there. He didn't even know that it was outsourced. He had the head custodian on speed dial on his cell phone. They were very pleased with the custodial services provided.
I would like to visit one of these schools.
Because I'm just concerned about right now the principals, a lot of them stay there late. And if, a lot of the custodians, they will walk the principal out. They will, make sure that they're safe. Somebody who's just there to clean the building for a day, will they have the same allegiance? I'm thinking more of a global and not just to clean. And I understand the money. I understand that.
But you're assuming that by outsourcing that means you're having temporary people come in and out.
And you won't.
I'm just
I'm
saying,
just-
I don't
I'm just
know
saying.
whether that's...
I'm just saying,
that's
how will
an
it be
assumption
set
is
up?
all.
Is it going to
Right.
be the same person at that building every night? Will they be different every week?
So, the folks from GCA actually spoke to us, and certainly left us with the impression that we would expect a lot of continuity, just the same as we have now, in terms of it would be the same people on the campus, they'd be assigned to the campuses. Okay, that's why I said the assistant principal who spoke to us, when he's a principal here, but he was assistant principal in Garland. He had the head custodian on speed. It was the same person responsible for the campus. In the recommendation, I want to emphasize that the second part of this here, down at the bottom of the page, is to outsource the contracts to multiple vendors. So, and we could be clear if you like, but the idea would be give a vendor I think it's a mistake to award like the entire school district to one vendor, because then you're at their mercy, right? Better to say, we're awarding you this feeder pattern, and you can and you don't even have to get the district out of the custodial business. You say, you know, we're going to start small. We're going to award it to this feeder pattern, see how happy they are.
And the in-house is competing with the external, and
Right.
you see who's the higher performer.
Right. And ideally, I'd love to see multiple vendors in there, so that they know that if someone else is doing a better job, they're likely to be out. You know, and a better job is not just keeping the floors clean. The better job is keeping the principal happy, keeping the school a good place. You know.
Being part of the school
If we were to
community.
do something like this, I just strongly suggest that we have a pilot program and not do it district-wide. You know, maybe a feeder school pattern, or maybe 2 or 3 schools, so that you can get a feel of how it's going to work in our district. But to have something like that to globally, you know, send out to all of the schools at one time, first of all, it's hard for us to control what's going on. Because if I own the company, I'm going to certainly tell you it's going to work.
Of course.
And so, consequently, we should either visit some of these other schools where they have outsourcing, and also, if we were to consider it, I would say do a pilot program.
So that would mean that custodial services, landscaping services, HVAC, food services, and records management, all the people that work in those departments, I'm just asking, would be gone.
That would happen.
Would be gone, and then whoever the outsource would run it.
No, we've only looked at custodial, but in the model of our familiarity with what happens in the custodial is, if you choose to do it, then the first people they interview are your employees, and they still come to your campus, but they have they're paid by someone else. So, if I could go ahead.
I've had personal experience with maintenance, and not me, but someone in my family, and they had a hard time getting people to be there. And they even had to do the work of some of the people who were absent. Now, that can happen anywhere. That can happen on a daily basis with a person who is on staff working, you know, at a school. They just might decide not to come to work. You know, so you know what I'm saying. I'm not saying that not to use that kind of program based on the absences, etc., because it can happen anywhere. But it was a little harder to control because, I don't know. So if we were to try, let's try it at one school or something like that to see if it actually works.
I'd like to make a suggestion that we insert in front of outsource. We say regularly review potential to outsource, and then and when it says award outsource contracts to multiple vendors, including an internal group, and on a pilot basis, something like that. How do you feel about that?
I'm happy to do that. I mean, I think one campus is too little.
Feeder
I'm just
pattern.
saying a feeder pattern.
But absolutely. I mean, when we've, I think the mistake that's been made often in the past is we've gone to a district-wide shift, right? Landscaping services, it was awarded to one vendor that really did not have the capacity to do the entire district.
Just look a mess.
Right? But
It's not currently outsourced.
I know now.
But when it was outsourced,
When it was, they looked a mess.
Mhm.
right. So, you know,
With those changes, how does we're just saying keep this conversation alive. If you do it on a pilot, and do it with multiple vendors, including an internal group. Which, if you do it on a pilot, you have your internal group.
right.
You're just
You still would
piloting
have
the
to-
outsource,
you would have to
right?
have an internal group. Because
Right.
I would hate to see these people lose
But-
their jobs.
So let me ask you a question. If this was outsourced,
They're doing a good job.
the teacher retirement, the things that the districts offer, how would that be handled? I know.
It depends if you're vested in the existing system, and in some cases, this is pure speculation, but when people change employers, they end up with 2 retirement systems.
Okay.
That's speculation,
Yeah.
not an
I mean,
expert.
you know, people getting hurt. Who pays for that? I mean, like,
Right.
are you working strictly for that company or strictly for the district, or do you have your hands in both areas?
You'd be working for
That doesn't mean
the
if it's
vendor.
outside, you still can't relax.
You would not be working for the district any longer.
But if you-
Philosophically, the idea is getting the ISD out of the floor mopping business and out of the management of the floor mopping business, because, and I get, you know, it's like a house. Everybody works together on a house, whether you're cleaning the floors or
It's kind of how you
paying
look at
the bills.
people, though.
Right. It's because I clean the floors in my house, so, you know, we all
one
do.
of the things is an external vendor knows what the latest equipment, you know.
Well, we should too. We're a big district.
But the point is we don't. You know, we
Why
end up
don't we?
spending
Why don't we?
Because we
have brilliant
live-
people in the district.
We approach a lot of things.
Or
as
the
if-
number
as if we're
number
an
one area we should be
island.
looking for the best equipment is education.
Right. You know,
And,
these are businesses that all they do is custodial services.
you know,
So we're going to pay for the equipment because the people are going to charge us for the service.
They would probably
They're
pick
not gonna buy
better
the
equipment.
equipment.
You could also say it's you could say it's, do you own your car or lease your car?
Right.
Anyway, all right, well,
I
all right.
know, you know.
So I think we've gotten all the opinions on
I
there, and
wanna
I think
go to bar.
I'm sensing there's a with these tweaks that we leave it in. And one other thing that I don't know that Jim was able to articulate is whether it's insourced or outsourced. We need to ask the campuses, are you happy?
That's in the next.
and ask
That's the next.
all the principals, not just a handpick.
You and I are using different pages, by the
Oh,
way.
right. Sorry. Anyway, so the third part of that is to survey the campuses, and we could put all campuses at least, and that was my intent. You know, at least annually on their satisfaction with all services provided, whether by internal departments or external vendors. You know, we've got to maintain. One of the things I loved about Alan King was he, you know, fully embraced the customer service mode. They treated central office as a customer service to, you know, there's an awful lot is expected of people on our campuses. Are we meeting their needs? So,
Susan, you want to take number 4?
Okay. So this comes almost pretty directly from the presentation that we had about early childhood a few months ago, and so the recommendation is to continue to expand the pre-K early childhood programs, accelerated programs. I thought it was a very compelling number to say that we're leaving tens of millions of dollars on the table by not providing services to students who are eligible for them, and that providing those services will really move the needle as far as those children's outcome educationally. So for us to make the investment at a reasonable level to say we want to continue to build these programs. And I understand, and that's why the bullets are in there, because it's there's a bunch of complicated reasons why we're not providing all the services. It's not just that we're saying, here they are, come get them, and nobody is. It's why aren't they, and do we have the facilities to provide them? And so to be able to look at that in a comprehensive way and provide the funding for that department to do its job, and then have some expectations on them that we're building up the number of kids that are in our pre-K early childhood programs. That's sort of the philosophic bent behind this, and so basically that's what it says.
And I added, because I continue to believe that the state allows for you to offer open seats to children paying tuition, and we've done it on like a count on your fingers state, but there's data that shows that heterogeneous classes where you've got a mixture of economically disadvantaged and advantaged kids, that it raises everybody as compared to a classroom where everyone's economically disadvantaged. and then it's a way to engage families to embrace the school and stay and make the school, just engage families who might otherwise not be engaged. But the TEA came back and said no, even though Austin allows it and other school districts allow this complement, that because Dallas has not yet satisfied, provided enough pre-K for everybody, that we have to prove that first. So I'm just saying, let's not let go of asking because we see a benefit. So everybody okay with leaving this section on?
And just make sure we have, teachers who have a strong skill set, for early childhood and the ongoing training, and not just, have programs and then strong acquisitions and then weak teacher training and weak focus on early childhood within, in the teacher system.
Great.
Well,
Yes, ma'am.
how do we advertise for the middle class families to attend these schools if the classrooms are not?
Well, right now we're not allowed to offer it. So right now we're advertising to those who are eligible because they're limited English or low income, and we've got some community partnerships to do that advertising. So you're right, but the middle class families, because the TEA has said you can't do it yet, there's no need for an advertising program.
So
But
do you have a pre-K now in every primary school, elementary school?
it's a spacing issue.
Except for 2 campuses.
Except for 2 campuses, which that's good. Because what I
Jackson, Lakewood, and can't remember the other one. There's a third one.
otherwise it would be a problem of transportation or getting.
We don't transport.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Ah.
We don't transport.
Of
So the
course not,
parents
no.
will have to be able to get them there.
Right, that's
And that's why a lot of them do not take.
that's kind of covered in the evaluate and report reasons families forego programs and make modifications to program locations, access, or other characteristics so that enrollment's considered a community norm. So that sort of addresses, like, we're urging that part of what this department does is look into those reasons and then try to formulate solutions for that.
So the program locations have actually gotten better.
Initially,
Since you have one in every elementary school except for 2.
So about 3 years ago, the board actually made that a big initiative to go to full day pre-K for all, wherever there was availability. So we've been pushing hard on that as a district, and that has continued to do that. Just as a reminder also, to support that initiative, exactly what you're saying is last year we approved the $5 million piece for that department to really engage in the types of initiatives that you're discussing.
So this recommendation really supports that $5 million outlay and encourages that it continue or grow.
I think it's important for you to know that financially it doesn't make money for us from the state because we only get paid.
Or the kid.
But it's
Over-
you're going to get paid for half a day and you have it whole day.
Oh.
Okay,
So it's a very costly program to us.
that is. And
Pay for it now, pay
this
for it later.
recommendation has partnered
It
with
has
daycare-
such outcome, consequences.
Lucy?
Sorry, it has partnered with daycare centers and other service providers to create realistic solutions. Now, I thought that some daycare centers have already started partnering with you guys, like Education First Steps. I was on the board, and
I
they.
believe in the presentation he did touch on those, on some of the things that we were doing with those
Now,
daycares.
about what do you do with Head Start? Do they ever?
So Head Start right now is a partner with the district as well to offer some program. I think there's a $700,000 grant with the Head Start program that's a partnership with the district as well.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
all right.
And that's again managed by that group.
They have kindergarten roundup. The schools kind of go and to those Head Starts and to those other places. And kinda-
Right, especially for kindergarten. Yeah, we were talking about the pre-K, so yeah, they do. They work well. We have to find out where they are so that we can invite them to the kindergarten round.
I think there's a lot of synergism around this right now. It's a great thing. Historically, you all have lived it, but it's my understanding that we've been behind because we didn't have the facilities, and we only put we didn't put we put pre-K where we had space, and that wasn't necessarily where we had kids. But the fact that we've been able to have the bond program and so on, that we have more opportunities to offer it. But that's why we're behind Austin and some other cities.
But we're getting better, huh?
Yes. So we're leaving it on. I knew that one would be easy. Susan, you can take the next one.
The student-teacher ratios in budgeting and operation, we've talked about that a little bit already with the, so this is addressing the question of if we're budgeted at 24-1, why are we operationally at 18-1? And I mean, it sounds like that's something that you guys are looking at all the
Yeah,
time.
we looked
So-
at it, but unless you change the configurations, and I've never seen a school district, very few that go to the, the clustering concept, which is, grade K through 2, and then 3 through 5. That increases your numbers at grade levels, because that's where you have to increase them in order to get the better ratios. So
So do we have to get a lot of waivers this year for the
Okay.
1 to 24? Do we have to get a lot of waivers?
Not nearly as many as Houston, and nor Highland Park had more waivers than we did,
200 and some odd waivers.
Yes, that's correct.
which is classrooms, not campuses. But it came out in the new, at the board meeting, they mentioned an exponential number by Houston, and then the next week it was in the paper that Highland Park had more waivers.
What's that due to?
We reduced those ratios this year to 23 to 1. Is that right?
That's in the budget, is that what you said?
The ratio is 23-1, correct?
What's that due to facilities or teachers?
So,
The waiver,
Increasing the classroom size.
decrease in the classrooms.
So,
I mean-
well, no, we raised it for budget reasons.
In
right?
2011.
We needed to
Correct.
save money.
Just to save money. Okay, I'm not just, I'm sorry.
This current year, we
Save money.
dropped that
But
ratio.
your question is, are we short teachers, and that was the reason.
Yeah, do we, yeah.
no, that was not the reason.
Okay.
But it's a Rubik's Cube, and with, as you all know, of, one campus might have the extra classroom to go ahead and add a teacher, another one won't, and then you've got, from my personal experience, don't you dare take me out of this classroom.
Well, I know sometimes the waivers are submitted because you have more
Right.
kids, but let's say you just might have an overage of 10 or 15 kids in the building, and you don't want to hire another teacher, so you submit a waiver so that teachers can increase their class size to make it happen.
So there's a couple of complicating factors in terms of the waivers. Of course, there's a specific period of time that they measure that.
Right.
That's one thing. So, during that period, there might be the waiver need, while 2-3
2
weeks later, there might not be that need. The other thing specific to that is that, we're only looking at direct classroom settings, in other words, teacher of record type of settings for that purpose. So we're not considering, for example, the PE teacher, the music teacher in this category. So it's just specific to K through 4, of course. And then the other component that kind of plays into this is that then you have the mobility of kids. So even though it might seem high at one point in time, when you evaluate at a later point in time, and then the grade configuration is the other one that I was trying to think of, because I look at by grade level. So you might be low in grade 2nd, and have sufficient room to maneuver kids, but in the 1st grade, you have to do a waiver. So it's by grade level as well. So those are the complicating factors that kind of play into this.
So I have a question then. If you compared us to peer districts, would our operational ratio look about the same as other people? If they're budgeting at 24-1, do they wind up as 18-1 as well?
I think it's similar.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can tell you, Northeast, we budgeted 24 to 1. 22 to 1, and our ratio was 15 to 1.
It's also language, right? Because sometimes you may have
mix.
1 to 8,
Absolutely.
but you can't mix the classes.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So there's some factors that really
So some
play.
factors that play into it.
All right. Go ahead.
Well, I'm okay to take this one out as far as a recommendation goes. I think if the question, if the
Not like-
question
we
is
don't-
asked and answered all the time anyway, then we don't need to weigh in as a recommending body. If that's okay with
Everybody
everybody.
agree? Who wants to take number 6?
I think I threw that in there so I can take that.
All right.
As you may recall from the bilingual education presentation, we learned that DISD chooses to go beyond the state requirements for bilingual education. We are required to provide bilingual education by the state, but I think it's we don't exit kids until 6th grade, whereas we could exit them earlier if we chose to. I think there are 2 potential costs associated with that. One is that bilingual teachers are more expensive because we have to pay stipends.
Because they're in higher demand.
Because they're in higher demand. There's fewer of them, and then the other cost potentially is in really this point about the operational class ratio. Because if you take a campus, we talk about it being, a campus being 600. If you're really dividing every grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, into bilingual and English, now you're talking about effectively 2 campuses that are like at 300, and that I think potentially could be a significant expense, and so. But I don't know the data yet, and so what I've suggested here. And I've done some, I don't know which version you all have seen, I've done some editing, but basically what I'm saying is we should measure the costs and the benefits of keeping students in the bilingual program longer than required by the state. And if the benefits don't justify the cost, then we should exit students from the bilingual classes as soon as they attain a working understanding of English, or after no more than 3 years in the program, which is what the state requires. So it's really a call to study this and see whether or not what the magnitude of this cost is, if in fact there is a cost, and then to look at what if there's if it's a significant cost, is it worth the benefits? No question that the folks in the bilingual program are very proud of what they do, and they believe that it's advantageous to these students to keep them in the program longer. It increases the chances of graduation and things like that, and that may well be the case. I don't know, but I don't think anyone has really looked at the cost.
The federal guidelines, right? And federal guidelines are what again?
No, it's state
I'm not
guidelines.
talking about the federal. This is, I know, but I'm saying the federal guidelines. There are federal guidelines we have to follow too, right?
I don't believe that's the case.
Huh? But I think we need to check that to see if there are federal guidelines, because just because a child does not speak a different dialect, what does that mean? What does that really mean? And the kids, what's the benefit to the kid to be able to, like I say, you pay for it now or you pay for it later, for them being able to be college ready? What does that really mean? So we just really look at, are we breaking federal law when we just say, okay, well,
we are complying with the law and more is what it's our
You're saying
understanding.
that they're staying in longer than they should.
Not that they should,
prescribed.
then is required by the
It's
state.
required.
And again, I'm not expressing an opinion here on whether or not, I just think, like a lot of things, we just keep doing it because that's how we've been doing it, and the costs are potentially significant. And again, we have what shapes a lot of my views here is we have a limited number of dollars to work with. If we put more money into this, it means less for other things we might like to do, whether that's extracurricular programs or tutoring programs. They're all benefits. We can't do all the things we'd like to do.
Deferred maintenance.
I think we have to, make sure that when we look at, and this is a specific example of a more general thing. I mean, we do just an inordinate number of different programs in this district, and they tend, once they get going, they just tend to keep going. No one ever stops to look and say, are they working? Right? Let's look at this. Let's study it. And because they just keep accumulating, and they can't all be. They just after a while, you just getting in the way.
I understand that. What I guess more I was thinking about is
Compliance.
if a compliance, and also with children. We know we have a shortage of bilingual teachers. I've been associated with schools where they did not have. They had a pre-K bilingual teacher. They had a second grade. First didn't have second, didn't have third because they had subs. They couldn't find anybody. Then went to fourth grade. So a lot needs to be looked at besides just the dollars. But did that child fully have the program vested through that child's educational life? What gaps are there? So that's I know that we're short of bilingual teachers. Kids are sitting in classes right now with no assistant. So what does that mean?
No.
I was just going to say, Jim, to your point, just speaking from my experience, talk about silos. Like in any one grade, we've got the two-way dual language class, we've got the one-way bilingual, and then we've got gen ed. So we've got 3 silos in a grade. What if, in this discussion, we're moving towards if the data is correct that's been presented, that the two-way dual language program is a more effective way of teaching native Spanish speakers in elementary education than the one-way bilingual. That if we at least eliminate one of those silos and have, gen ed and the method of teaching non-native English speakers is a two-way dual language program that then, tracks those kids. They've got English speaking in their classroom, but we don't have 3 silos per grade. So we're not filling a 8-person one-way bilingual, and then we're filling 2 two-way dual language, and then we've got this gen ed. We at least can consolidate the language learning piece to also incorporate, what's been such a huge draw for the neighborhood schools is this real, rigor with a language difference for kids to come in. We've got a waiting list at our school of kids who wanted to be in the dual language, and they couldn't. But there's a one-way bilingual class that's got,
that could use more
13
English
kids.
speakers.
Yeah. And they nudge each other and help their buddy, and there's a lot of learning that happens, obviously. The model doesn't need restating here, but anyways.
Part of that issue is that our two-way dual language says if you're the English speaker, you can only come in kindergarten.
Right.
So where you've got a silo of 8 Spanish speakers
in first grade or second grade or something.
That if they had some English speakers willing to give it a try, we'd
Yeah.
have.
Well,
Anyway.
I've seen a lot of different things that actually happen. Of course, you have the survey, the language survey that's administered to all the students when they come into the district. And basically, it says, what language do you speak at home? Okay. And if that language is spoken at home, that almost qualifies the student to go into that program. And in many cases, some of the students speak
English
well. And personally, I had one student, I walked into the classroom, and he said, we have in our lessons in English and in Spanish, and he was supposed to have been the bilingual student, but he spoke English quite well. Sometimes parents tried to pull these kids out once they found out that that survey actually put the child into the classroom, and you have to go through. You just can't pull.
You
that
have to
child
jump
out.
through hoops.
You can't just pull that.
I had a foreign exchange student come live with me for 4 months and go to Woodrow, and it took me 3 days to get her not into bilingual classes. And the reason she was here was to be
Learning
speaking English.
Right. And see, it really does take a lot out of the staff at the schools to get kids out of those classrooms. But in addition to that, there are other languages our kids come with that we have to immerse them in our regular classrooms. I had a student that was from Israel, one from Africa, could not speak any English.
We don't have
There was
bilingual for
no-
them.
And they,
Okay? And within 6 months. But of course, they probably were much smarter than I, to pick up on the language that quickly.
Linguists is not.
But what I'm saying is, we had a department that we could refer to here in the district at the administration building to sort of give us some leadway and some help in helping those other languages. But that was only over the phone. And but I'm just saying that, you know, that many of our kids can be emerged, and I'm not saying which ones, but
We're just saying
not
study
any
it.
program is perfect, and just study it.
And then one other thing that Jim got to with respect to the cost and the benefit is we've got to weigh, in my mind, we've got to weigh the importance of having a bilingual person or an effective bilingual teacher. And if we have a shortage, we have the risk of having ineffective teachers, and all the more reason to study compressing it so that for quality of teachers.
Was this part of one of our recommendations last year?
I don't think so.
Are we good with this one?
Are we good?
I am.
Do we want to skip and do dual language, or just keep going down the page? I didn't know if we wanted to blend those.
Do we really need to increase funding? Do we know that we need to increase funding for assessments to permit testing?
I'm sorry, where are we?
Do we have money? Number 3, it says increase funding for assessment to permit testing in both English and Spanish for all
That's down in the
Oh, you're reading Sarah's from,
the other.
we took her stuff and, I'm sorry, where did that?
It's in number 13.
That was mine. I mean, that was Jim's that I was just reiterating in number 6. Sorry, Jim.
So let's go ahead and skip to 13, come back to 7.
Those should be put together, yeah.
Yeah.
So we kind of talked about that, but
Yeah.
do you want to talk to this? Who wants, Julie, do you want to do
I
it?
feel,
Sarah
yeah,
wrote it, I think.
Yeah, I was just restating someone else's opinion, I think, but it's right here. That dovetailing those two programs could reduce some of the inefficiencies, or not inefficiencies, but reduce some of the
Silos.
yeah. And if it has a better outcome anyways, seems like
Do you have personal experience with her other recommendations that there aren't enough materials in Spanish in those programs? And then something about enough teachers, teaching assistants.
right. I didn't know that the Gomez and Gomez required a full-time teacher assistant, so that was new one to me. As far as the materials, though, yeah, I think at our campus we've invested in it. I don't know how it feels at other schools. So
It's the,
They require teacher assistance.
I'm wondering if, I suspect, so I'll ask you, do the dual language programs require by law a teaching assistant, or is that the Gomez and Gomez program?
So I apologize, I'm not well versed in the dual language program in terms of the allocations. I can tell you that the only teacher assistants that we allocate are based for special ed, which is one item obviously that we're not talking about specifically. And then the bilingual teacher assistants are based on the total number of left students at the campus. How they utilize those to support
the principal.
It's the principal.
To me, this particular recommendation speaks to a local issue, not
Maybe
necessarily.
we should take this one.
That's my feeling.
Want to remove the recommendation about teaching assistants under there?
Yeah, I think we don't have enough information, and I have a sense based on what he said. If you think about Lakewood, they don't have any bilingual programs, so that you have a blend, and so you've got a roaming assistant. And I think this is unique to one campus where they're trying to get a program off and they don't have enough Spanish speakers.
I'd say, for example, at Rosemont, who's now expanding the dual language program to the 8th grade fully, there is no specific allocation for teacher assistants for the middle school level. So.
Well, yeah, that's the policy. Okay, so leave in the dual language and we'll move it up to be closer to bilingual or blend the two.
Have we ever looked at, I know this is money, adding Mandarin in English?
So Mandarin, I believe, was
on-
Thomas Jefferson.
Is it Thomas Jefferson
And I believe
and
this continues to be offered.
It's at J.O. Long.
City Williams.
right?
So it's all over.
Economic wise, kids being able to compete. Because
And what the man who introduced it at TJ said, you had people who already knew two languages, although it's I met some kids at TJ and they were coming from all over the world, but once you know two languages, picking up a third is so much easier. Okay, so shall we go back to 7, and that's Lizzie.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I want you to talk
I
about
have been. Okay.
We're not.
or Susan, do you want, since Susan wrote it?
I wrote it, but
So
it was
That's why I said you can go ahead.
we should look at what it costs to pay all teachers for their unused sick time when they leave, regardless of when they retire. And really the motivation, I think the philosophical, as I was thinking this through, there were lots of questions like what's the right thing to do, what's the economic thing to do, what's the, looking at from retention of teachers kinds of stuff, but it just seems like we shouldn't penalize a teacher for the professionalism they show by coming to work, even if they don't feel up to par, because that's what we're starting to expect from our teachers, especially in the era of the TEI. That, not to say that we always haven't thought that our teachers were professionals and really committed to our kids, but if we're expecting that level of professionalism, then we shouldn't penalize them by having them lose a benefit that they could take because they decided to come to school when they didn't feel well.
I think
You said it in a different way. You didn't have to hear me. You see,
I think Gilbert,
support.
Gilbert, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you may want to put in a recommendation that would change policy. Because right now, the way the policy reads, if you don't use all of your days by the end of your, January, is it January? That you lose them. So
That's
it does,
our point is
Yeah, but what-
there's a cost to that because
Surprise!
so what I'm saying in here is I think you need to make a recommendation to change that policy. So that will then allow to at least start accumulating the days.
what I've had trouble with is I appreciate the core issue of the two-pronged issue of this is a benefit or an expectation, and the other is if under the lose it or use it, if they decide to leave, then to be gone, then we're paying for a sub anyway. But in the last 2 years, I've never been able to really understand what it's costing us under one program or another or something in between.
Yeah.
So
I have a specific question about that. If I'm working for the district and I have 7 sick days this year, 10, let's say 10, and I get paid $100 a day, so that's $1,000 that is built that's somebody's expecting. They're thinking they're probably going to have to pay for me. That is that how it's budgeted, or do we say, well, we think our teachers take an average of 5 of their sick days a year, and so that's how it's budgeted. And so at the end of So that would make a difference, it seems to me. And then if I don't use my time and I retire 30 years later, now I've got $30,000 coming to me, maybe, because of that, or some number in there. Is that breaking the bank? Because...
Not necessarily. I guess the first thing that I think you need to address is back in 2011, what they did is they reduced the number of days that were given from 5 days to 3 days. Sick days. Well, personal days, whatever. And then they said, forget, we won't deal with those that were already accumulated. But from this point on, they say you can accumulate, I think, up to 30 days. And if you accumulate any more and you don't use them, you lose them. So it's like we're going to reduce the days, But then, if you've got accumulated days, it says if you don't use the days, you then lose them, which encourages people to use them instead of accumulate. And I think that even if you don't pay people, if they can accumulate the days, they may think, well, if I got a catastrophic illness or something, then I'll have more days that are going to be used for those catastrophic days. Now, I'm not, I agree that certainly, paying for the unused days when they leave, depending on the criteria which you determine, is not a bad policy. We did that certainly from the school district I was at. We weren't quite as generous as you're suggesting, but it can work. But you need to change the policy first so people don't, get rid of the idea that if you don't use them, you're going to lose your days.
So you could actually have a policy where you had a cap that if you retired and you had 2,000 days, you only get paid for 100 of them or something like that.
Well, the way ours worked was that we first of all, you had to be with the district X number of years, 10 years. And then we paid for all of your unused days at, I think it was $75, and it was tied to the substitute days. So we did pay. And we said you had to be eligible for retirement. You didn't have to retire.
I'd like to. Go ahead.
Well, Chip, the policy for not using your days, if you don't use them, you lose them. I thought that applied to vacation days, which would have been outside of the classroom.
The policy applies to the local days that the district gives, which is 3
all
days.
employees.
Which is 3 days per employee for the professional employees. I think it's for all employees. I think custodians are in different format.
Okay, so that policy does
That's the
apply
one where you have a cap of 30.
Okay,
Yeah.
because
And then-
I pulled the policy and I just didn't see that. I guess I'm not looking.
Yeah, we're not talking about state days. We're talking about local days.
Local days. I was looking at state. Okay.
You can carry forever and transfer them from district to district.
Okay.
We wouldn't pay for state days. We'd only pay for local days because state days you can carry from district to district.
Okay. Now, the Dallas ISD's policy, compensation and benefits, leaves and absences, where you have the district local leave. Is that what you're talking
Yes, ma'am.
about? All district employees who work 20 or more hours per week, excluding substitutes or temporary employees, are entitled to 2 days earned.
Does it cost more for a teacher to be absent
Well,
each day? I mean, be honest. Does it cost more for them to be absent or less for them to be absent?
Well, when teachers are using their days, we're going to pay them their full salary. Plus, we're going to be paying for the substitute, and that's why I think the recommendation here is that when they leave, we pay the substitute rate, because by not leaving, we save that. By not being absent, we save that that substitute amount.
okay, where it says accumulated district local leave, any district local leave accumulated prior to September 1, 2011
Correct.
shall remain available to employees until depleted.
That's correct.
Okay. The unused accumulated district local leave balance shall be reduced to 0 immediately upon termination of employment with the district. So carrying up. And so that's the one we need to change. Or this is the policy.
That would be
Is that one of the policies that we would probably need to change? You're saying, okay, in order for us to have our
Allow accumulation.
accumulation, right? So we would have to change this. Okay. And, okay, we can look at this,
You want to? Yeah, if you write something up and then send it to me, and then I'll read
well,
it.
I guess he's saying we have to change we have to delete one in order to, we can't you know, in order to have the other one. See, when we talked before, I thought the teachers were already informed that they will be able to be paid for their accumulated sick days.
So there's an incentive, or not an incentive, or reward. It's $500,000 that we set aside last year. This is the first year we do it. Where if you notify that you're leaving, retiring, or whatnot at a certain point in time, then that will be paid at some determined ratio or pay per day.
But not everyone was eligible for that.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's divided among those retiring.
Then you had an age range there when you presented to the trustees last year.
I
That
can't
age
remember.
range was the retirement age of 60. But someone said that was erased. Carmen said, no, that's
I don't
not the
think
case now.
Oh, okay.
But I have not seen a new policy written. So we're saying it's a recommendation, but not a policy. Okay.
And,
So we need to.
well, if I would like, based on what Lucy would like to see happen, how easily can you tell us what that costs? Because an alternative to approach this is to move number 7 to be a component of number 2, where it's something we look at and that we look at as compared to the other school districts, which would include Houston, which has a more favorable policy.
But see, I keep reading local leave,
Yeah.
local leave. And normally it's
Okay.
unused sick days, you know, when it applies to teachers. When I look at local leave, I think in terms of you know, if you don't use your days, you're going to lose them. So regardless whether you use them Christmas or Easter or, I mean, if you don't use those days, you will lose them. And that's why I'm kind of confused, because when I read
Oh, you got it. Got it.
leave time
Got it.
rather than
Okay.
sick time, because as an administrator you have leave time.
He's helping me by calling it
Okay.
self-funding, in that you're either paying for it in substitutes or you're paying for it.
Oh,
to-
that's how it was written with, you know.
And so it seems like, so operationally what we're talking about doing is recommending, our recommendation is that someone evaluate options and then craft a policy change that would allow teachers to no longer be in a situation where it's use it or lose it,
To accumulate days.
and so they can accumulate days.
To be with our
And be-
students.
Recommendation to allow staff to accumulate days.
That's what's
So that would be the clearest and most effective way to write this recommendation.
That's what I'm saying. You pay for it now, pay for later. If they're in the classroom, it's better than if they know they're going to end up.
Having some money, they will just,
gonna
but if you're
say.
going to take them away, why don't you use them? That's common sense.
All I'm going to say, you're absolutely correct.
I never understood that one.
All I'm going to relate to is the last 2 or 3 years, we, our workforce has been, in teachers, has been a lot younger teachers coming up. So it's 15, 16, 1,700 each year. So I'm just saying that there's that turnover within those ranks. I don't know if it impacts anything.
I want to leave it in. I think they're understanding what they're talking about in terms of rewording it, and I think just for an
I
understanding.
have to ask one question, please, if you don't mind.
Uh-huh.
The difference between leave and sick days.
It's the same.
We shouldn't call them sick days.
What should we call
It
it?
should be local.
Local personal days.
Because it just says local leave.
Yeah,
And,
it's the same thing.
We should call it local days or local leave. Either one.
Not leave.
Local
I wouldn't
days.
Leave.
it's not a leave for it.
Not a leave.
Local days.
I'm saying evaluate options and craft policy change to allow teachers to accumulate local days.
Correct.
Unused. Okay. And somewhere, just for maybe it's 5th grade understanding, I like the use of the word expressing that it's self-funding. That there really
it
isn't
would
a
be
cost
self-funding.
because you're not paying subs.
Right.
That
In
may be
spirit.
part of the
If you
rationale.
pay,
Right, okay.
each teacher $90, I mean, let's say $85. I forgot what I put in here. We normally pay substitutes $90 a day or more. So if we pay the teachers to come to work for $85, you will get $85 for every day that you work and for your unused days. And so that would save the district some money.
I think we're sold, Lucy.
We're sold.
So I can be quiet now?
Yes.
I mean, Jim has experienced it where it's been successful in other districts. We haven't had it here since I've been here, so we've never experienced whether it worked or not.
Well, I know it kept me at work for 15 straight years without missing a day.
It can be retroactive, go back to...
Okay, number 8, 9 we'll go to Jim.
Okay, so number 8. This has been a source of frustration for me for some time. When we see data, budget data or actual data, we're often only seeing the general fund numbers. But oftentimes, the district is devoting other resources to that effort, whether it's a campus or a program. Those other resources would include Title I money, maybe other grant money. I would love to see the district adopt a different default proposition, which is to say, when you're presenting data, whether it's a campus budget or whatnot, show us the full picture. Show us, I know there are a lot of constraints that are attached to these other sources of funds, and that's important for the district. But from the public's point of view, I'm interested in seeing the totality of the resources that the district is devoting to any effort. And if you want to break it out for us, so we can see that some of the funds that are being spent are Title I funds or other grant that this program is dependent upon a grant, all the better. But I think these other funds are a significant source of district funds, and it's important for us to see how those other funds are spent as well.
We agree, and I can tell you, if you look in the brown pages of the budget book, you will see that we put in that for every campus the federal dollars. So you can see the general operated in the federal dollars. Now, can we do a better job in terms of breaking it down into functions? Yes, and we are working towards that goal. It has to do with systems capabilities and the amount of time and resources that we have, but we agree.
You got number 9, or Susan?
We've heard all kinds of great things from different departments, amazing stuff I've always been very impressed when I meet with people that are on the upper echelons in the district about professionalism and things that are developed and ideas and programs and all this kind of stuff. And so we should be marketing that stuff. If we're creating educational products and programs, we should market them. And at the same time, we should be looking for other marketed or available programs for needs that we have. So basically, this recommendation says let's try to share what we're creating, and let's try to take advantage of other folks that are sharing what they've created in the educational arena.
I think certainly professionally that through professional organizations we share, whether that's TASB, TASA, or TASBO. So I think that is shared. I will tell you that I don't think there's any greater component as a CFO for bringing additional dollars through enterprise funds, and I've been fairly successful at that. One area that, we tried when I first came here, and that was to market our TV programs. And I can tell you that we really didn't get the kind of response that we wanted. So I say that we it's not something that I don't consider and try to do as a CFO, and we're certainly aware of that. And to make that recommendation, certainly could highlight that we should continue that effort. And as I say, I think especially on probably the TV and marketing the TV might be something that you would want to note. Now, a lot of the programs into academic and curriculum-wise, I think that Ann Smisco's group, takes it around the state and gets into conversations about it. And, under open records requests in a certain sense, I don't know school districts that really do that with one another, but, we certainly do share.
I think one of the things that also compelled this was the professional development piece that we heard about, all the different stuff that's being developed in response to specific needs and that's available at sort of at the user's discretion as opposed to everybody being in one place. And so that just seemed like something that would be easy because it's packets of instruction or information that would be easily transferred.
You might want to spell out specific areas that you might want us to look at.
Okay.
Okay, number small group instruction.
We all like that one, number 9? Yeah,
Like small group instruction.
Lucy says small group instruction. You want to take number 10?
Sure. So, we've heard, including from the superintendent, that the district has a mind-boggling number of programs ongoing, and at some point, you get into trouble. So I think it would be a good idea if, on an annual basis, sort of part of something that the trustees are provided every year, is let's look at a review of all the programs out there, everything from Reading Minds to Bilingual to ROTC, and let's see, what are we using? How many students are taking advantage of this? What can we look at the cost of these, and then I don't know that this second point here is not something that could be done necessarily every year, but I think we ought to be looking at the effectiveness and the campus level, the campus satisfaction with these programs. And again, I didn't put it here, but I would hope that would lead to occasionally programs going away, because we're always adding new ones, and it becomes a burden on the campuses to adequately support all these programs. I think we have to be focused and disciplined about what we're asking the campuses to do. And so I think a report like this would help the public and the trustees appreciate just what's expected of the campuses, as well as the different resources that are available.
Subscription levels, because on the different,
that's what I meant by usage. But there's a different. We could put a different term for it.
Purchasing too many programs, you're saying?
Pardon me?
Are we purchasing too many education?
Well, potentially. I don't have enough information to say that, but I do have the sense that there are just so many programs out there.
And there might be some that are similar, and so instead of managing two different similar programs, pick one, because then you consolidate relationships.
Well, I hate to throw out my educational recommendation on this, but because I was looking at the education programs, maybe we were spending too much money in buying programs. But if they were to take a look at the textbooks that they have and follow the textbooks, there are so many activities and different methods of teaching, different styles, learning styles. A textbook will even tell you what bulletin board to put up. They'll give you the vocabulary. In social studies, they'll give you the vocabulary to learn. Science, they'll give you vocabulary to learn. And I have actually rated teachers who actually use the textbooks and not anything else, and they have had higher scores with their kids because they follow how to teach kids. You just don't hand them a program or even a textbook without building background.
Well,
and the textbooks would teach them how to do that if they would follow them.
And student outcomes, we don't have in
they
there.
follow the TEKS, they will outline how those are taught, and the state wrote the textbooks to follow.
Sometimes too many programs.
That's what it is. There's too
Many
many
different
programs.
things that do not
That's
match.
some nodding back there.
You know, like
So this sounds like a good recommendation.
Well, so then I would feel a little bolder and say what I'd like to add to the recommendation was basically with a view toward reducing the number of programs by weeding out the least effective programs.
the research-based programs that are not just something that you saw on at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I'm gonna order that. You know, on television. You know,
What's going to make me a better
something
cook?
that's research-based that has been proven and tested.
Right.
Because
And we talk
sometimes-
about the science kids,
Right, they
you know,
don't
that-
match because first grade, the program is different from the second grade and third grade. Everybody's doing something different. Nothing matches and merges.
And I've heard stories of people opening up the closet and
Oh
all
yeah,
that
stuff fall
starts
out.
pouring out. All right. Amen.
Maybe you can add to my education is how do you fit in individualized learning into this recommendation?
Oh, I can tell you that.
Ask and you shall receive.
You want to know? We can talk about it. There's a parking lot agenda.
Well, I'm just wondering the juxtaposition between looking at programs and individualized learning.
This could be additionally
Because
because
it's a
we're
running
moving
record
towards that.
of what the child has learned. Okay.
Right, but isn't it also
Start
the,
out with the data.
The
This is where
research-based
this
program
child is.
to address learning styles. Research-based program.
Well, the last one, no surprise, maybe no explanation or not, but just that, not the last one, but the next
Something
one.
to do with athletics, the Lisa Meyer?
But because the very much appreciated additional allocation last year to extracurricular, the portion that went to athletics was devoted to personnel, unlike what went to the other extracurricular areas. They are still woefully behind in equipment and so on, and so we're asking that they get an additional $3 million to meet those needs. So, straightforward.
Well,
Okay.
did you look at the current budget? Have they utilized the funds that they were allocated this year?
We looked at it last week, and there's some timing efforts because of the hiring of the people. So we'll have some carryover, but when this new program strategy is in place, athletics once all their people are hired, they still need equipment, and in my mind, once the equipment gets caught up, then they can get caught up on stipends and supply budgets that they have on an annual basis.
well, I certainly,
He's just going to be hitting you up for more next year, is what you say.
yeah, I certainly
maybe,
am
but what I mean
in
is-
favor of adding dollars to the athletic programs as long as we add it to a new program called kite surfing.
And we've got a certified teacher.
Well, actually, we could get that. CFO would be good.
What about frisbee golf?
Nah.
Like number 12, who wants
But let me say on a serious note that what I'm looking at is, I'll tell you that our budget right now is just really, really tight. Is that we've got, I don't know if you all are aware of SHAR's program that we get reimbursement from Medicare. And what we have found is we have found a company that claims that they can make applications for all of those trainers who service, Medicare kids, can bring back quite a bit of money. So, yeah, my recommendation is, if any of you real close to Jeff Johnson, I tried to set up a meeting with him to install this program and let the athletics department have the revenue off of that SHARS, which we certainly would hope would be enough to make him
Sit up and pay
a little bit high. Yeah,
That's
so take those.
excellent. Fantastic.
Francis is actually the head trainer that manages so maybe that's.
I should have done this a long time ago.
Well, they're not aware because they didn't show up at our meeting. So,
They were in athletic championships.
Number 12. Who wrote that? Susan. I?
No, that's what I mean.
I wrote it?
Yep.
Oh, you're right. I did. Okay. Okay. We've got HB5, and that's a big headline. And this is just an endorsement that we appreciate because of HB5. We know it's going to take extra funding, and we feel like that's important. And we heard from Career and College Readiness, and a rather nominal, an inexpensive program in my mind that needs to be reinstated and for whatever reason was cut in 2006 is to identify kids. In my mind, it's other districts start it in 7th grade. These are the kids that have the potential to be National Merit Scholars, and it's awarded to 1% of the students nationwide, and for Dallas ISD, that means we should be getting about 80 of those a year, and we're not getting anywhere close to that, and the nominal cost of doing the program would be paid back with just one kid getting the financial rewards that come with having that distinction, and then there's additional benefits to the district in that Susan wrote that. I thought it was excellent. The prestige that comes with it and recognizing that we have these quality programs. So,
Are they applying for these?
no, that's what you get on the PSAT.
And so,
It's automatic.
and we haven't had anyone?
It's been
Not
a,
even from town?
This year we have 2 or 5, so.
we have 2 or 5 when we should be having about 80.
Oh,
And
you
in
say we should have about 80.
In 2006, we had, I'm going to guess, I asked for the data, maybe 20, that other districts, one high school can have 15 or 20. And to me, it's just, our kids deserve it just as much as the others.
The superintendent has put money into all juniors and seniors taking PSATs, and there's also a program.
But this goes
There's
back,
also a program for tutoring. So,
yeah, this is going back to, they take it in 7th grade. And
Then that's probably all.
they're aware.
None of it.
They're working on it.
anyway, it's finding what the school districts with the highest, historically, it's understood that the school districts that have the highest number of kids getting this, they've said, look at Jose and
7th grade.
Elizabeth and whatever in 7th grade, and you're saying let's stay on them to get this.
7th and 8th grade.
I think one of the concepts and ideas is they got to take the exam. So we're paying for the exams to be taken.
I love that we're doing that in high school, but for this particular thing, it's very focused, and I also, and it is focused on a small population of kids, but when other kids see that you're putting energy behind their best friend, they follow. So I think that's it, and so we'll write these up and send them around by email, and any other comments?
Let me ask one question. This is not on the PSAT, but when our kids graduate and the ones who don't pass the state assessment, they're counted as dropouts, right?
Just dropouts.
Oh, I don't know the answer to that. I would not necessarily think that. I think that if they don't pass, that we actually, it's the end of the course exams now. And
I'm talking the ones last year and the years before.
well, I'm not sure that necessarily, because we have a summer school where I know they did tutoring and then they retook the test. So
I think they remain part of. So they actually they're not counted as for daily attendance.
They get a certificate. They get a certificate of attendance.
I know this because I had a niece that had to do this several times. So she's still in the school, and she still gets the support and services to attempt another try to pass the exams. And I know she did it several times. So it's not I don't know how it works, TA wise.
Many of the principals and counselors will try to call that student who didn't pass to come and get tutoring,
Exactly.
take the test, so that we don't have to put you on this dropout list.
That's
I
exactly
had to
right.
do it when I was over at.
I mean, like, I think they changed the policy or something last year or something. They don't give you
I haven't been there
support.
for
I
years.
think you just kind of like,
We can follow.
they hand you a book and then you're on your own.
You're on.
You're on your own.
Yeah, which is
Now.
sad. Yeah, it could have been that way even then, you know. But they
I was just
all
wondering
study
what
on their
happened,
own and just come back and take the test. It wasn't an organized program to bring them back, and this is your schedule for
Setting.
studying and et cetera. So it could have been.
We could follow up on it.
Yeah, they probably
I
like.
wonder what happens to them.
Probably
Only
need
because
help.
we were getting ready to do something about that in a nonprofit group that I work with, and I was just wondering to make sure.
Start talking about pet librarians because we
Miss Williams, the best person to talk to would be Ann Smisco. She could, give her. Oh, sure, why not? Does she know you? Okay.
I'm just wondering because I know those kids are out there on this. We have almost 200.
If it's not Ann Smisco, talk to Sylvia Reyna and probably Leslie.
And they're just out there and they can't even get a job because they can't get. They don't have a GED or they don't have their nothing.
That's a good question. I mean, we should.
Well, we have a
You know how because
adult basic ed program that they can get their GED through.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. I work with a nonprofit, and we're getting ready to get those students. But some of them, like one young man, didn't pass it by 1 point. He could get his high school diploma, but if he's out there by himself, he can't tutor himself if he doesn't have any help. Or you see what I'm saying? Because I don't think the ISD does anything anymore. They used to like bring you back and
My niece would have.
A certificate of
of
passing out.
attendance. To give us a certificate that you attended school.
Okay, can they take that to
No,
a college?
they can't take it anywhere. It's not a GED.
It's
It's
not a
not